Hello and welcome back to Hammer Horror in Order, the series where all the members of the All American Spook Show podcast watch all the Hammer films, horrors, and thrillers in the order in which they were released. We got off track there, like what the tail end of last year into this year, when we called those Hammer Horror Order and addendums. But now we're well past that. We've been out of that for the last couple months. Now we're back in the order in which they were released, and we've finally worked our way up to 1962. Actually, this is the last Hammer horror or thriller that they released in 1962, and that's The Phantom of the Opera. So I guess the first question I have here for everybody is, what are your feelings on musicals? And I guess really the next question is this really a musical?
Well, who wants to take it first?
No, it's not.
Yeah, because I was thinking
It's not.
halfway through, I was like, is this? I mean, like it feels kind of like a musical, but it's not because it's not like the story's being told that way. It's just more like here's the story, and it just so happens to be, they're at an opera, right?
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
I think it was mainly Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Mhm.
That version on of like Phantom of the Opera that was more akin to being a musical, right? And then the stuff that came before that, and some of the stuff that came after, I guess, is more so based on a novel by Gaston Leroux, which of course is a novel, so you aren't going to hear anything in the, So the opera part plays sort of backseat to the story, the gothic drama, romance, horror stuff going on, and I think that's what a proper Phantom of the Opera adaptation would be. And I think some of these other ones, like this Hammer one, kind of is treads the middle ground. Like you said, it's got music in it, it's got some opera elements in it, but it's not really a musical per se.
Donnie, what are your thoughts on musicals?
Not a fan. Not a fan. I'm just, I
Well,
guess,
y'all haven't seen Cannibal the musical yet, so
oh, it's true. Yeah.
That'll make you.
Well,
And of course, when you see The Apple, this will make you a fan of
I mean,
music.
oh yeah,
I'm not
yes.
generally a fan of musicals anyway. But I mean, fuck, man. I
I'm
was
not.
I was actually dreading watching this because one, I had never seen the Phantom of the Opera. I had no desire to, uh, because I don't like opera, and you know, I just
But
I
like
hate
you both said,
musicals,
though,
man.
it's not. It's not about the opera per se. It's not about. You know,
Uh,
it is, but it ain't. You know what I mean? It's like there just happens to be this situation that is playing out in an opera. So yeah, it's definitely about that, but it's not like all about the singing
yeah,
because there's something else going on there. But
yeah. The first 10 minutes, I was like, motherfucker, I'm gonna hate this shit. Just like, yeah, but yeah, yeah. Just
the only familiar tune that I even heard in this thing for me was Johann Sebastian Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D
Mhm.
minor.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
At the organ when he's
yeah,
when he's at the organ, yeah.
that's probably the most famous organ music ever, right? Other than something they play
Especially when especially when
baseball.
it's comes to gothic horror and stuff from that era,
Yeah.
even earlier. I think it was used. I believe it was probably used in the original Phantom of the Opera, the silent one. When they would have an orchestra in the pit at the theater or whatever playing, was used in his the Phantom's reveal scene at the organ.
And that's probably Universal's because I think they had done it at least twice before this one came out, right? And I think the one
Hmm.
with Lon Chaney Senior is the
Yeah,
one that's kind of the most popular one, right?
yeah, that was the silent one from I forget what year it was exactly, but in the 20s, yeah,
Yeah, it says there was
25, maybe 25. I
yeah,
want to say
1925, and then there was another one in 1943, and that one had Claude Rains in it.
Yeah, that one me and Tiana saw that at the theater last year, maybe something like that, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of arguable which one is like the definitive per se, as far as like your classic horror is concerned, right? It's one or the other.
Yeah, everybody's got their like me personally, my preference is the original Lon Chaney one, just because. But then some people don't care so much for silent movies, so
Yeah.
and somebody might prefer the Andrew Lloyd Webber one for some reason, but
for
but yeah,
some
Yeah.
like
reason,
Donnie was saying, I'm not the biggest fan of musicals
I'm not.
myself either. There are a few exceptions, but not many.
I agree.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's like,
Yeah.
if you want to, I mean, if you really want to call Breaking Two Electric Boogaloo a musical,
Well,
then
if you call that a musical, then yeah, that's a masterpiece of musicals.
Yeah, I don't know if that counts. Like I said, you haven't seen the Apple yet, so
Fantastic.
The
But yeah,
benchmark.
like the one I mentioned earlier, kind of joking but not really joking because it is a musical. But Cannibal the musical, which we got to get on the show at some point. That's Trey Parker and Matt Stone's first feature film they did.
So yeah, this one was directed by a familiar name, Terence Fisher. It was also written by another familiar name, Anthony Hinds, and he was also the producer on this. But he wrote the screenplay, but not as under his own name as John Elder, just like he did last month when we watched Night Creature. So I'm assuming it's because he was a producer on it. Maybe that's why he didn't want, screenplay credit and producer credit. I'm not sure.
Probably.
Either way, that's, it's kind of weird. But this was, as Smoke mentioned earlier, it was based on the composition by Gaston Leroux, and it stars Herbert Lom, Heather Sears, and Edward de Souza. And Herbert Lom plays, I guess, the Phantom, right? He's the professor slash Phantom in this one. Story wise, I'm not sure. How does this stack with any other versions that you might have seen, Smoke?
I think, like I said, I prefer the silent one overall. If we're talking about family opera movies, the ones that I've seen, I can name off real quick, would be that silent one, the 1945. Is that what it was? The one with Claude Rains,
I think it was 43.
43, and then the this one now, which by the way, this is the first time I've seen the Hammer one actually, and then also the Dario Argento one, which is fun in its own way. It's not the greatest Argento's ever done, but it was it's got its moments. So uh, I think it kind of for me this one falls in there with probably with the 1943 one from Universal. I'd put it on that level.
Now, this one was actually done kind of not necessarily by Universal, but it was done in an agreement with Universal because Hammer had a deal with Universal at this time period, and this was part of the deals. They wanted them to do a new version. They didn't quite want to do a new version themselves, but they wanted Hammer to do a new version for them, so they distributed it. But one note that I did see was that this was actually done. Anthony Hinds, I think it was, said that this was done for Cary Grant because apparently around this time period, Cary Grant wanted to be in a Hammer horror film. They were like, well, I guess this would be a good thing for you. But then I saw another quote was like, yeah, we did it with him in mind, but we never really thought he would actually do it. And that's exactly what happened. And they got Herbert Lom because there was some back and forth between like what part would he have played? Would he have been the Phantom, under a mask for 98% of the movie, or would he have been the lead guy that the producer or whatever that was kind of the main guy that had a love interest going on with the singer, so like, but it never happened, and then we got what we got. But that would have been interesting, right? Cary Grant to be in a Hammer flick.
Definitely, it would have been really interesting if he was the Phantom too.
Yeah, but I think overall, I feel like it's a well done movie. It looks good. It's fine enough, but it just doesn't, for me, it just doesn't pack the punch that a lot of the Hammer stuff that we've watched so far. I mean, what do y'all think?
Yeah, in regards to the horror, for me, definitely, it's of the strictly horror ones that we've done, as far as the gothic ones, of Frankenstein and Dracula and the Werewolf, or the Wolfman rather. Yeah, I would put it towards the other end of that. But also, even when it comes to Universal, I'm kind of that way too. The Mummy and Phantom are kind of a little bit down there for me, as opposed, compared to like Dracula, Dracula,
Dracula.
Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. So that's my personal opinion.
Okay, so I guess the debate here, the question is this the worst thing that we've watched here on Hammer Horror and Order just yet? Because I say that because the low bar, the table, or the floor, I should say, is The Stranglers of Bombay from 1959. We only gave that one 1 3/4 hammers. Now that's out of 5, so it's like your normal star rating, but 1 3/4. So is it better or worse than Stranglers of Bombay? What do y'all think?
Me personally, I like Stranglers of Bombay better, and I hated that one.
I see. That's the thing I war with, because I think it's a decent movie. It's just not quite my cup of tea, but I can't completely shit on it because it's not my cup of tea. It's still well done. The acting's fine. This is definitely one that probably could have used some Peter Cushing or Christopher Lee.
Yeah,
right.
We did get what's his name now? I can't remember.
Oh yeah,
Alfred the Butler. What's his name?
Alfred. Yeah.
Michael Gough.
Yeah.
Michael Gough. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're somewhat of a creep in this.
Yeah.
Somewhat. He's full on creep. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the earliest versions of the casting couch bit, is yeah.
Also, the one thing it does, like it looks beautiful, it does, and we noticed that when we were watching it, the remastering or whatever of this thing looked great. I mean, the colors and everything were rich. Uh, but although the sets were okay, they were fine, but it definitely doesn't hold a candle to me to the silent one. Still, those sets, whenever they were underground in the canal sewers, whatever, looked much better to me in the even in the 20s one, which I'm sure was low budget in and of itself, maybe for the time. But well, not really. For that time, it was probably pretty damn expensive. But you would think, by the time you get to the time that Hammers came out, that they would maybe have a better set than you could have had in 1920. But no, that one's still the top for me as far as Phantom movies go, and the set design and everything.
So do we want to
while
say this is just as good or worse than the Stranglers of Bombay, or I'll give you a couple that are right above it. Stop Me Before I Kill had 2 hammers, and then X the Unknown had 2.25 hammers.
well, and I mean, me personally, I enjoy those a little better.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be skewed, so yeah.
So
I
maybe
defer.
so I guess really the debate is Stranglers of Bombay or this one. We'll make it simple. What do you think, Donnie? You've already said your piece. Smoke, what do you
Yeah.
say? What would you pick?
Uh, I guess I'll go with I might go with Phantom. I might give the edge to Phantom just slightly. I mean, we're splitting hairs here now, but just
Donnie,
slightly above. I know Donnie might be either slightly or a good bit, Stranglers of Bombay being more so than Phantom, but I'm on the side of Phantom being just slightly a hair above Stranglers.
John, what do you say?
The same as Brian. Well, I just like that gothic feel to it, even though it wasn't,
Yeah.
as spectacular as it could have been. But
I think for me, I think I would rather watch Stranglers of Bombay again, but I think this is a better movie. Just
yeah,
so I think I'd give the edge to Phantom. So I think we can all firmly say, can we disagree on 2? Because that puts it right above Stranglers of Bombay and ties it with Stop Me Before I Kill. So that's probably about right
Yeah.
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And like Tiana said, I'm a sucker for Gothic, even though I could prefer the non musical elements of Gothic, I guess maybe. But I mean, it's fine in this movie. So that might be why it's a little bit better than Stranglers of Bombay for me. Just the setting of it being in that Gothic style.
All right, so we'll officially end with 2 hammers for the Phantom of the Opera from 1962, and then actually next month we move on to 1963 because from our list, everything that we've gathered, they only released 2 horror or thriller movies in 1962. So we're 1962. I'm sorry. So we're moving on to 1963, and it's going to be one that there's a horror element to it, but it's more of a thriller. And we're going to be watching Paranoiac. This is one that I have not watched. Don't really know what to expect. So we'll find out next month. So for Donnie, Tiana, the Professor Smoke, and Will, who wasn't with us, I'm Josh. We're from the All American Spook Show podcast. Check out everything else we've got going on here on the YouTube channel. And of course, new episodes of the podcast, wherever you get your podcast, come out every Monday at 6 p.m. East. So we'll talk to you next month.